The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the stained glass windows of St. Michael's Church as I stood alone at the edge of my daughter's grave. The world around me was a blur of muted grays and blacks, mourners huddled under umbrellas, their faces etched with pity, their voices a low hum of condolences that barely reached me. My little girl Sophie was gone. 8 years old, with eyes like summer skies and a laugh that could melt the coldest heart. She'd been stolen from me by a disease I'd fought tooth and nail to defeat. The leukemia had won, and now she lay beneath the earth, her small coffin swallowed by the sodden ground. I clutched the single white rose in my hand, its thorns pricking my skin, a sharp reminder that I was still here, still breathing, even if I didn't want to be. The space beside me was empty. James, my husband of 12 years, wasn't there. He hadn't been there for weeks, not at the hospital when Sophie took her last breath, not at the house when I'd packed away her toys, and not now as I buried our daughter alone. The mourners dispersed, their footsteps squelching in the mud, leaving me with the priest's final murmured prayer and the hollow ache in my chest. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket, a cruel intrusion into the silence. I pulled it out with trembling hands, expecting a message from my sister or a friend checking in. Instead it was James. Busy with a client. I'll call you later. The words glowed on the screen, cold and detached, but it was the tiny detail beneath them that stopped my heart. A location tag. Not an office in the city, not a conference room, but a place called Azure Sands Resort, a luxury beachfront escape halfway across the country. My vision swam, not with tears this time, but with a searing white-hot rage that burned through the fog of my grief. He wasn't working. He wasn't mourning. He was lounging in paradise while I stood here, ankle-deep in mud, burying our child. I don't remember the drive home. The rain blurred the windshield, the wipers slashing back and forth like a metronome to my spiraling thoughts. By the time I stumbled into our empty house, my coat dripping onto the hardwood, I was shaking not from the cold, but from the realization that had been creeping up on me for months. James hadn't just abandoned me today. He'd been abandoning us for a long time. The house was too quiet without Sophie's laughter, her footsteps pattering down the hall, her voice calling out for me to read her another story. I sank onto the couch, still clutching my phone, and stared at his message again. Busy with a client. The lie was so blatant it almost made me laugh, a bitter, broken sound that echoed in the stillness. I opened my laptop, my fingers moving on autopilot, and started digging. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first, just some thread to pull, some crack in the facade James had built around himself. It didn't take long to find it. Our joint bank account told a story he'd never meant for me to read. Withdrawals, hundreds of them labeled as business expenses, siphoning thousands of dollars over the past year. Money I'd thought was going toward Sophie's treatments, toward keeping us afloat while I spent every waking moment at her bedside. Instead, it had funded plane tickets, hotel suites, and lavish dinners. I cross-referenced the dates with his so-called business trips, and the truth unfolded like a grotesque tapestry. While I'd been holding Sophie's frail hand, begging her to fight, James had been sipping cocktails on rooftops and checking into 5-star resorts. Then I found the photos. His social media was a curated lie, locked behind privacy settings I'd never bothered to check until now. But a mutual friend's account wasn't so careful. There he was, tanned and grinning, his arms slung around a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her smile wide and carefree. Her name was tagged in the caption. Vanessa. My stomach churned as I scrolled through more. Vanessa by the pool. Vanessa on a yacht. Vanessa laughing as James kissed her cheek. Each image was a dagger, twisting deeper into the wound he'd already carved. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The room spun, the walls closing in as the full weight of his betrayal crashed over me. He hadn't just cheated. He hadn't just lied. He'd built an entire second life, one where Sophie and I didn't exist, one where his daughter's death was a footnote he could ignore while he basked in the sun with his mistress. And now, on the day of her funeral, he couldn't even muster the decency to pretend he cared. The grief I'd been drowning in for weeks shifted, morphing into something darker, something alive. And journo fury coursed through me, a wildfire I couldn't contain. James thought he could walk away from this unscathed, that he could leave me to pick up the pieces while he played house with Vanessa. He was wrong. He'd taken everything from me, my daughter, my trust, my future, but I wasn't going to let him take my dignity too. Not without a fight. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen, the rain still pounding against the windows. I wrote down everything, every withdrawal, every lie, every moment he'd chosen himself over us. The plan took shape with every stroke of the pen, fueled by a cold, unyielding determination. I wasn't just going to confront him. I was going to dismantle his world piece by piece, until he had nothing left to hide behind. He'd built his life on lies, but those lies would be his undoing. The first step was evidence. I couldn't move forward without proof, irrefutable, concrete proof that would leave no room for his excuses. I reopened the laptop, diving deeper into our financial records. The withdrawals were sloppy, poorly disguised as business expenses with no receipts to back them up. I found emails, 2 careless messages he hadn't bothered to delete, sent to Vanessa about their getaways and future plans. One email dated 3 days before Sophie's death made my blood run cold. Once this is over, we'll start fresh. She'll never see it coming. He meant me. He'd been planning to leave me, to erase me from his life entirely, while I'd been praying for a miracle that never came. I needed more than this, though. James was slippery, a master of charm and deflection. If I wanted to trap him, I had to be smarter. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. I found her online, a woman named Rachel Voss with a reputation for discretion and a knack for uncovering secrets. I called her the next morning, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I need you to dig into my husband's life, I said. Everything he's hiding, his affair, his money, his lies. I want it all. Rachel didn't flinch. I'll find what you need, she said simply. Meet me tomorrow 9 a.m. at the diner on 5th Street. I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. This was the beginning of the end for James. The diner smelled of coffee and grease, its faded red booths a stark contrast to the polished life James had been living. Rachel sat across from me, her sharp green eyes scanning the notes I'd brought, printouts of bank statements, screenshots of his texts, the photos with Vanessa. She jotted down details in a small black notebook, her expression unreadable. He's not as careful as he thinks, she said after a long silence. I'll track his movements, dig into his financials and see what else he's hiding. Give me a week. Thank you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need him to pay for what he's denito me to my daughter. Rachel nodded, a flicker of understanding in her gaze. I'll get you what you need. Over the next few days I waited, the house a silent prison of memories. Sophie's room remained untouched, her stuffed bunny still perched on the pillow, her drawings pinned to the corkboard above her desk. I couldn't bring myself to pack it away, not yet. Instead, I poured my energy into planning, sketching out every move I'd make once Rachel delivered the evidence. Each night I replayed James's text in my mind, busy with a client, and the rage kept me awake, kept me focused. Rachel called on the 5th day, her voice clipped and urgent. I've got something. Meet me at the diner now. I grabbed my coat and drove through the rain, my heart pounding. When I slid into the booth, she pushed a thick manila envelope across the table. You were right to suspect him, she said. It's worse than you thought. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were photos, dozens of them, showing James and Vanessa in places I'd never imagined. A penthouse in Miami, a ski lodge in Colorado, a private villa in the Caribbean. There were bank records too, detailing transfers to offshore accounts, and falsified invoices from his companion marketing firm he'd co-founded a decade ago. He'd been embezzling, siphoning funds to finance his double life. But the most damning piece was a series of emails between him and Vanessa, outlining their plan to disappear. Once the divorce is final, he'd written, we'll move to Spain. She'll get nothing. I stared at the words, my breath catching in my throat. He wasn't just cheating. He was plotting to leave me with nothing, no money, no home, no trace of the life we'd built together. And he'd been doing it while Sophie was dying, while I'd been begging him to come home. There's more, Rachel said, her tone grim. He's been meeting with a lawyer, someone shady, off the books. Looks like he's trying to hide assets before he makes his move. I nodded, the pieces clicking into place. Thank you, Rachel. This is everything. She leaned forward, her voice low. What are you going to do with it? I met her gaze, my resolve hardening. I'm going to make sure he loses everything. The plan crystallized over the next few hours. I couldn't confront him yet, not until I had him exactly where I wanted him. I needed him to think he was still in control, that his lies were still holding. So I sent him a text, my fingers trembling as I typed, I've been thinking about us. I know things have been rough, but I want to talk. Can we meet at the lake house this weekend? Just you and me. His reply came within minutes. Of course, babe. I'll be there. The casual tone, the pet name-ite made my skin crawl. He thought he could play me, string me along while he finalized his escape. But he had no idea what was coming. The days leading up to the weekend were a blur of preparation. I organized Rachel's evidence into a binder, bank records, emails, photos, all time-stamped and annotated. I contacted a divorce attorney, a woman named Karen Holt with a reputation for shredding unfaithful spouses in court. She reviewed the documents and whistled low. This is a gold mine, she said. He's looking at jail time for the embezzlement alone. You've got him dead to rights. But I didn't just want legal justice. I wanted James to feel the weight of what he'd done to Sophie, to me, to the family he'd thrown away. So I prepared something extra, a video. I spent hours combing through old footage of Sophie, her first steps, her giggles as she chased Bubbles in the backyard, her weak but brave smile from her hospital bed. I edited it together with a trembling hand, tears streaming down my face as her voice filled the room. This wasn't just evidence. This was a weapon. The lake house loomed ahead as I pulled into the driveway, its cedar walls and wide windows a painful reminder of happier times. Sophie had loved it here, the dock where she'd learned to fish, the fire pit where we'd roasted marshmallows under the stars. Now it felt like a hollow shell, a stage for the reckoning I'd orchestrated. I carried the binder and my laptop inside, setting them up on the dining table with deliberate care. The video was cued on the screen, Sophie's face frozen in a moment of joy. I poured myself a glass of water and waited. James arrived an hour later, his SUV crunching over the gravel. He stepped inside with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, his linen shirt and sunglasses screaming vacation more than reconciliation. Hey Ellie, he said, dropping his bag by the door. Good to see you. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. Thanks for coming. Sit down. We need to talk. He slid into a chair across from me, his posture relaxed, oblivious. I know it's been tough, he started, his voice smooth with rehearsed empathy. But we'll get through this. Together. The lie was so effortless it almost broke me. Instead, I reached for the first piece of evidence, a bank statement showing a $10,000 withdrawal dated the day Sophie was admitted to the ICU. I slid it across the table. Explain this, I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. He glanced at it, his brow furrowing. What's this? Money you took from our account, I said. While I was with Sophie fighting for her life. Where did it go, James? He shifted, his charm faltering. It's just business stuff, Ellie. You know how it is, Travel clients. Client. I cut him off, sliding a photo of him and Vanessa on a yacht across the table. Is that what you call her? His face paled, his eyes darting to the image. Ellie, don't, I snapped, standing to grab the remote. I turned on the TV, and Sophie's laughter filled the room, bright and alive. The video played her blowing out birthday candles, her waving from the dock, her whispering, I love you, Daddy, from her hospital bed. James froze, his hands trembling as he watched. This is what you missed, I said, my voice breaking with rage. This is what you threw away for her. For your lies. He didn't speak, his eyes glued to the screen. I slammed the binder in front of him, pages spilling out, mails, bank records, proof of his embezzlement. You were going to leave me, I said. You were going to run off with Vanessa and leave me with nothing. But you're not getting away with it. Ellie, please, he stammered, his voice cracking. I didn't mean. Save it, I said, stepping closer. The police have everything. Your company knows. You're finished, James. He stood, pacing, his hands raking through his hair. You don't know what you're doing. This will ruin Mepperson, my career. Good, I said, my voice steady. You deserve it. He sank back into the chair, his head in his hands, as Sophie's laughter faded from the screen. For the first time he looked small, broken. But I didn't feel triumph, only a hollow relief. "Get out," I said. "We're done." He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. I stood in the silence, the weight of the confrontation settling over me. It wasn't over, not yet, but I'd taken the first step. James had underestimated me, and now he'd pay the price. The next morning I set the rest of the plan in motion. I sent an anonymous email to his company's board, attaching the financial records Rachel had uncovered. By noon, whispers of an internal investigation were circulating online. I shared the photos of James and Vanessa with our mutual friends, watching the shock ripple through our social circle. 2 days later, the police called, confirming they were building a case. When James was arrested outside his office, handcuffed and pale, I watched from a distance, a strange satisfaction settling in my chest. The weeks that followed were a storm of media attention, headlines screaming about the disgraced executive and his double life. James called from jail, his voicemails piling up, but I never answered. I didn't need his apologies. I'd already taken everything he valued: his reputation, his freedom, his future. But revenge didn't heal me. It couldn't bring Sophie back or fill the void she'd left. One night, as I sat by the fireplace, a letter arrived, forwarded from our old address, written in James's shaky hand. I tore it open, my heart pounding. "Ellie," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know the truth. The night Sophie died, I was on a plane, not just running from you, but from what her doctor told me. He said her chances were slim, that an experimental treatment might help but wasn't guaranteed. I didn't tell you because I couldn't face it, couldn't face losing her after trying everything. I failed her. I failed you. I'm sorry." The letter slipped from my hands, tears streaming down my face. A treatment, a chance he'd kept from me. The rage returned, but so did something else: pity. James wasn't a monster, just a coward who'd crumbled under pressure. I didn't excuse him, but it made him human. I didn't write back. Instead, I poured my emotions into a journal, letting the pain and clarity spill onto the page. Weeks later, I visited him in prison, needing to hear it from his lips. He looked broken, his eyes hollow as he confessed through the glass. "I see her every night," he said. "I deserve this. I don't forgive you," I told him. "But I'm letting go." And I walked away, the final thread severed. From there I rebuilt. I sold the lake house, donating the proceeds to a children's cancer charity in Sophie's name. I moved to a small apartment, filling it with light and memories of her bunny, her drawings, her spirit. I started the Sophie Fund, a foundation to support families like ours, and watched it grow, touching lives across the country. I found joy again in photography, in friendships, in the laughter of children at a playground we built in her honor. One evening, as I sat by the window with Sophie's photo, a little girl handed me a flower at the playground. "For you," she said, and I smiled, feeling Sophie's presence in the breeze. "Thank you," I whispered, knowing she was proud. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning, and Sophie's light would guide me every step of the way.
If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.